Layer styles are effects you can apply to every single layer. If you want to apply a layer style, you need to double click on the empty area here on the layer, and this pop-up will appear. Now, as you can see on the left, we have different types of layer styles, and each one will, of course, create a different result. You can have multiple layer styles on the same layer at the same time, and some of them you can also duplicate them and repeat them over and over. And also with this menu here, down here, you can move them up and down in order to rearrange them. So on top here, you have some presets you can apply to the layer itself. This stuff here is not very useful, so I'm going to jump it. Let's go to the blending options. Now, here you can see that we have the same blending options we can have here in the layer panel. So we have the blend modes, we have the opacity, and we have the fill opacity. Now, what's the difference? You know that opacity will basically makes the entire layer disappear. But if you have some layer styles like this, and you go down with the fill opacity, only the content of the layer will disappear, but not the layer style. So this is pretty useful if you want, for example, in this case, keep the stroke, but you want to hide the content itself. So, you know, opacity and fill opacity works the same here or here. And then here you have some options about advanced blending. And for example, channels will just hide or show one of the channels that compose the image. So if you take away red, for example, you will only get green and blue. And the same happens with the other channels. Now, these will create cool effects if you duplicate your layer and you take away one of the channels and then you move the content itself. This reminds me of those anaglyphic images that you play with when you were a kid with those special glasses. The knockout option is useful if you want to punch through the old document and reveal some lower layers. So let's say you have a document with a text, a layer with a flat color and an image. You need to select the knockout layer, go here, knockout. You can decide if you want to knock out shallow or deep, which means that shallow will punch through the first layer, deep will punch through all the layers to the background. Let's say shallow. And then you need to go down with the fill of this layer. And as you can see now, we are punching through the whole document. It's because we need to set up this layer as a background layer. So I click on this one and I go here, layer, new, background from layer. And as you can see now, this layer is locked. It's a background and we can see through. So, I mean, this is not very useful for ArchViz, but I don't know, in case you need to make a presentation and you want to do something like this, of course, now you can change the text. And it's pretty cool. You can do this without, rasterizing the layer of the text. And you can do something like this. You can take this on top and then blur it and get nice results. Now, normally what happens with layer styles is that a layer style is something that happens on top of layers. So for example, here we have some, color overlay, some satin, some inner glow. And if you press OK, and then you change the blending mode of this layer, you see, it doesn't matter which blending mode you're working with is not going to be visible because the layers will be on top of it anyway. So if you want to blend if you want to mix this layer style together with the layer itself, and then is to be able to work with the blend modes, you need to double click on the layer to get the layer styles and click on this blend interior effects as a group. And once you do that and you press OK, then you can just change the blending mode, and as you can see, the result will take in consideration also the layer styles before blending the layer with the others. When you have a couple of layers and you attach them, pressing Alt and clicking in the middle, now the second layer, this layer on the top, use the first one as a mask, which is called clipping mask. Now, normally what happens if you change the blending mode of the first layer, the king layer, I would say, and it happens that even the top layer will get the same blending mode. But what if you want two different blending modes? You need to double click on the first layer and uncheck blend clipped layer as a group. And now the second layer will keep its own blending mode. So you can keep it normal or you can change it as you want. But anyway, they will get two different blending modes and not the same one. Let's see another couple of examples here about advanced blending. Let's say we double click here on this green circle and we add an inner shadow. Normally what happens is if you add a mask and you paint the mask black, the layer styles will follow the shape of the mask, as you can see here. Now, if you don't want that, you can double click on the layer itself to get the layer styles, and in the blending options, you can turn off layer mask hide effect. As you can see now, even if we paint a mask, the layer style will not follow the new shape. And if you turn off transparency shape layer, then and also the layer mask hide effects, now the layer styles are following the mask and not the content. Remember that in Photoshop you can also draw a path using this pen tool. So you can click in here and draw a path. If you close it, then you will see the path here in the path list in the path tab. And then if you had a couple of masks, the first mask will be a painted mask and the second one will be the vector mask. As you can see, layer style will follow the vector mask. So if you don't want that, just double click to get the layer styles, blending options, and check vector mask hides effect. And as you can see now, the effects of the layer style will not follow the vector mask itself. A very, very cool feature is the blend if option. So if you double click on the top layer to get layer styles, then you can choose to hide without masking values from it. So if you go here, blend if, and then you move sliders here in this layer, you can hide the dark tones or the bright tones. And as you can see, the line here is pretty sharp and noisy, but you can press Alt and click on the arrow to break it, open it, and make such fall off. We have now a layer without informations in between these 2 points. Now, talking about layer style themselves, we have Bevel and Emboss will generate such a chamfer, and we can change the type of the chamfer, inside, outside, emboss, and so on. We can change the depth of it, we can change the size, we can soften it if we want, and this kind of shading part is something that you will find in almost every layer style, and it's some sort of lighting tool to generate speculars and shadows where you want. And you can use a global light, which means that if this effect has global light on, then the angle will be shed amongst all the layer style with the global lights on. So if you change it here, it will change even in the others. But if you uncheck this, then this layer will be on its own and is not going to affect other shading angles or such a thing. Now, the Bevel Emboss is, there's 2 options, contour, you can change the type of chamfer, the shape of the chamfers, I will say. And the texture it works like a little bit like a displacement, if you know what I mean, like a bump. This is not very cool. I don't think I'm never use this stuff in Archviz. Stroke is a way to make a border on the content shape, and it could be inside, it could be outside, it could be in the center. You can change the blending mode if you want. You can select an opacity, and of course you can change the type of fill. You can have a flat color, a gradient, or a pattern. And then you have inner shadow, but for inner shadow I will use this layer here. So inner shadow will basically create a dark shadow inside. Actually, you can change from here, so you can even have something like bright. Doesn't I mean, it's an inner shadow because the default settings are looks like, you know, it looks like a shadow, but you can change it. You can change the angle, you can change the distance, you see. So for example, you can have a nice shadow here, and you can have something that looks like a 3D shape. Now this is not very useful in Archviz, but maybe when we are going to paint or we are going to do the matte painting part, you know, and you need something that looks like a 3D sphere, this could be helpful. And you can have more than one, so you can, I don't know, have a first shadow with a little bit of opacity, and then you can have another one. And of course, the top inner shadow will be on top of the second one. So keep this in mind. So this will be, I don't know, a little bit darker, a little bit less big. We can even work with a different kind of angle if we switch off global light, and you can also move it if you just click in there. And so it's pretty cool because you can have exactly the kind of shadow you want. Now inner glow is the opposite. You know, it's just a bright area inside the selection, inside the content. Satin will basically create something like, you know, a specular, and sometimes this is cool if you have, I don't know, a text or shape and you want to just simulate something like that looks like a reflection. I mean, again, I'm not going to use this during the during the course, but you know, you need to know that it's there. Color overlay, gradient overlay, and pattern overlay will basically put a flat color, a gradient, or a pattern on top of the content itself. So you see the layer is blue here, but now we have a color overlay, which is completely red, completely opaque with normal blending mode. So this is going to be visible 100%. But if you want, you can go down like, I don't know, 50%. So now we have something purple because it's a mix between blue and red. And same for gradients. And you can choose like a preset, or you can make your own gradient here. Pattern is a way to put a texture or, you know, an image on top of it. And if you want a pattern, if you want to make a pattern yourself, you need to go here, you need to open an image and then go here, edit, and then define the pattern and then press OK. And that image will become a pattern, so you can double click on the layer to get the layer style and put that pattern on top of it as a cover. And then you have outer glow that works outside, and drop shadow that, again, it's a shadow that works outside. I mean, again, I'm not going to use this stuff, but you know, it's there, and you should know that.